Welcome to the Difficult Question Podcast. I am Bob Howard. The Difficult Question is a podcast about opinions, and it's where every opinion matters. It's also where we have some of the most healthiest debates around some of the most difficult topics. Our topic for today: how do we move the Black community forward? Well, how do we move African Americans forward? I think this is a good topic. I think it's if for some reason it seems like African Americans have to struggle at every turn. It just, to me, I don't know if it's to you guys, but that's to me. We got an all-star cast today. We got Will, Brandon, and Justin, and we got Kim. And it should make for a great discussion. I guess I would like to start by talking about our past. How has our past contributed to the way we are today? What has our past done to shape our community today? Let's start with Will. Will, what do you think? How has our past shaped us?
Well, I think our past, going back as far as to slavery, because in America, that's where they tell us our past begins. But I think you can't be proud of slavery. I think it still teaches white supremacy. When you teach, coming up in school, we were taught y'all were slaves. Abraham Lincoln freed y'all. Then comes the civil rights movement, and y'all got equal rights, and hey, everything is good, and now everything is on y'all. But what I think they missed is, they missed a whole generation of people. That first generation of freed slaves, I always say that they accomplished great things. Uneducated people, but they had all the skills. They had all the, they was the workers. They built, they painted. Some of them did math. And I think also, it's things even during slavery that they don't teach us or tell us, it was actually Black plantation owners,
Whoa.
Plantations were.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Big and flourishing as some of the other white plantations.
Okay. So
I think. Oh, go ahead on, Bob. Go ahead.
No. I wanted to before we lose that thought, I wanted to have Kim kind of add to that. Can you add to that?
Well, the thing that the problem that I have with the way that we are learning our history is that in school, all we're being taught about our history is about slavery, when there's much more about our history than that. We have a lot of Black people who have done a lot of amazing things. And I think a lot of that is being missed when it comes to the way that our children or the way that we were taught in school. And I think that parents today, because our history is not being taught, we have a lot of things to be proud about when it comes to the people that came before us. And I think that parents need to start teaching. First of all, they have to learn the history, and that's part of the problem. A lot of them don't know our history when it comes to our contributions to this country and to this world. And that needs to happen so that the pride, when a child is growing up, they will have pride in being a Black person, because if all you know is that you were a slave, how can you be proud of being a Black person?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
No pride.
No pride. Brandon, you want to add something to that? Like our past, how has our past contributed to who we are today?
So my brother, he's with me on the call today. We had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about how so much of our identity as African Americans is associated with how our relationship with white America, right? How white feel about us, uprising from the roots of slavery and making something and taking it for our own. So I think if you talk to, people a lot older than me, other generations, people within that realm, I think, even down to me, even down to my daughter, I'll say we are taught to depend heavily on the white man's perception of us in terms of shaping our own identity.
That's so.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've had some significant. Outside of slavery, of course, you had the civil rights movement. You have Jim Crow. You had, I'm going to say, I call it the Boys in the Hood era, where they brought the crack cocaine in. Right, there was so much that we had to overcome. And Justin, what do you think? How has our past contributed to who we are today?
Well, it's contributed everything, the good and the bad of who we are today. You could trace a lot of the mentalities, of course, back to the slave trade and mentalities that was beating the slaves and all that during slavery, but also the resilience, the toughness, the fight. And just this week I was rereading Frederick Douglass's Narrative of the Life, you know what I'm saying, that his autobiography, and there was that big moment, at least for him, that he sees as a turning point in his life, you know what I'm saying, where he stands up to the slave master. He stands up to him. He beats him up. He won't let him whip him again and all of that. And he says, like, essentially, I done showed y'all how they made a man a slave. Now I'm about to tell you how they made a slave a man. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it's that's in our history, obviously. And these are just the most obvious names, the Harriet Tubmans and people like that, who, like, it wasn't like people were just sitting around. A lot of people were sitting around just getting beat and stuff like that and just accepting being enslaved, but there was a whole lot of resistance. Nat Turner, like all of these different people, and it's the both and, that I think is important to learn. And I think I'm gonna go on the opposite side. Pride was brought up, that we should have pride, but I'm gonna say there's a humility, I think, that we can learn from the past. To be grateful for the people that laid the foundation so that I could live this little weird life, that I get to live now, like white collar life and all of that, you know what I mean? I could humble myself, and I thank the people that came before that went through so much worse than me, that fought for stuff that I don't have to face nowadays, you know what I mean? Obviously, there's still a long way to go. Obviously, as much as so many of us are flourishing, there's a lot of us that are still living in, really violent communities, not having access to education and all of that and stuff. So it's like a both end. I think we're both thriving, and there's still a long way to go at the same time. And all of that, obviously, I think trace back to the past.
So you brought up some very, very good points. So I guess really quickly, your experience really quick. Like, so we're going to start with you again. So what about our past is most significant for you? Like, what is something that really sticks with you, that drives you to do better?
Well, I'm originally from Mississippi, and I found out Mount Bayou, Mississippi was a city that was bought. The land, it was a plantation. It was actually two plantations, and a couple of freed slaves got together and bought this land, from their ex-masters. And they started, it says the first Black municipality in the country, but definitely the first Black municipality in Mississippi of all states, Mississippi. So when I look back and I read about things like that, and like I say, I take into consideration that these people, were just previously owned by other people. These people were, uneducated. These people wasn't afforded, a lot of the luxuries that we have now, but they were still able to accomplish greatness. So for me personally, it doesn't allow me any excuses. Like, I'm a person who don't believe in excuses. So like you could have the world stacked against you, but you could always choose to fight, or you could choose to, just sit there and take what they give you. So like when you look back in the past and, you talk about the Tulsa, Oklahomas, the Black Bottom here, Greenwood, Illinois, you talk about all these different places, and these people were considered the bottom of the barrel, and they literally brought themselves up, to a prideful state, something that we all could be proud of. And I think really that's the history. For me personally, it's the history I try to learn. It's the history I try to teach my kids.
Right.
Because that's where I feel like our pride and our strength comes from.
Right. It's kind of like taking the worst parts of the hog and making delicacies out of it. I mean,
And making delicacies out of it.
We've been really, really resilient.
Yeah.
So,
Wonderful.
Yeah.
right, Justin, what about our past? What about our past that just really sticks with you and drives you to do better?
What about it? It's kind of going off the same thing that I said. It is that resilience. It is that fight. Like I remember a few years back, I got to go. I had never been down south, like for real, and I got to go down south, and it was like this kind of civil rights history tour, and it was just something simple. Like we were at Alabama State University, HBCU, and they had a plaque. And I forgot the exact year. It was like a plaque saying like when the school was founded and stuff. But it was literally like probably in like the late 1860s, maybe early 1870s. And it was kind of, well, we'll say this is crazy. Like that means these people walked out of slavery and started a college. That's the first thing that they did. You know what I mean? And just that. And when I think about our history too, I think about that, like that commitment to education. When I'm reading the Frederick Douglass narrative, you know, like how like this dude is putting his life on the line to learn how to read when he's not supposed to. You know, I'm thinking about all of the Black educators, you know what I mean? That's the first thing they wanted to do when they got free was build a schoolhouse. And you had people 80 years old learning how to read next to people that's 5 years old learning how to read and stuff. Wow. You know, and that when I think of, and maybe that's because I work in education, so I like maybe put greater emphasis on that. When I think about like what we came from and that commitment to education, that commitment to learning about our past, that commitment to all of these things, as far as like, why I'm committed to it now and think like we just don't have access to it now. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't have access to teachers that know the history that could teach them and can help them to aspire to the same things that people was literally aspiring to, literally walking off the plantation into freedom. You know what I'm saying? So that's one thing I would say to look back on is that like commitment that we had to education.
Okay, Brandon, what about our past is like is significant to you, significant enough to just be a part of your life?
I think I'll give a more modern example and an example from my personal life. So me, you know, you guys are my family, Kim, you know, my dad, you know, remember Edward, Mark, everybody, my uncles and cousins would come over. And I remember you guys having conversations. I remember a lot of times these guys would complain about, you know, the white man and I can't get ahead because this and that. One thing I never saw my father do or never heard my father say was he could not get ahead because somebody was holding him back. You know, talk about somebody coming from the crack period, you know what I'm saying? And decided to uproot themselves and move and change the direction of his own family tree. Yeah. To me, that's Black excellence. You know what I'm saying? He would post on the wall. He had a poster board. It was Bentleys. It was the islands, and this and that. So me being Black was never like a crutch growing up. You know what I'm saying? I never taught that because I'm Black, I cannot achieve. So for me, that was like the most important thing, you know, for me, in terms of me as a Black man and giving me that confidence to go out into the world.
Okay.
That's okay. Can I jump in real quick right there?
Yes.
Because just a little, I think that was the crazy thing for us too, is that, you know what I mean? We grew up, and that's kind of because we grew up in Southfield, you know what I mean? When you're talking about like, we didn't have to grow up in Highland Park, you know what I mean? We didn't have to do all of that. We didn't grow up in Detroit, we grew up in Southfield. So it's still, everybody around you is Black, essentially. Everyone that you're interacting with is Black. But we didn't have a lot of the other stuff that you get when you in like Highland Park in Detroit that y'all had to face. And I remember like literally like being Black, it was just normal. It was just a thing. You know what I mean? Like even my mental space, like the middle school I went to was Mary Thompson Middle School. Mary Thompson was like one of the white founders or early settlers of Southfield. But in my mind, she was like a little Black woman or something like that. You know what I mean? Just because the world around me was so Black, like I didn't have that issue. And like going to college, that was the first time I went to a predominantly white school for college. That was the first time I saw like, man, like people really look at you crazy because you Black. Like people really racist and stuff. Like that, you know what I mean? Yeah. But just like even that insular community. Yeah, I don't know. That's not maybe what you was asking, but there was just a thought that kind of came up for me.
Right.
About,
that's a good thought. That's a great. Go ahead, Kim.
I just want to say this. When you talk about Highland Park, when we grew up there, I will tell you, it was very different than what it is now. We still had Caucasian people on our block at some point when we were living there. So when we were there, it was kind of like a suburb when we were there. It changed. Yes, when we became adults, it changed. It started going a different way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well,
I've been lying all these years.
no. In the 90s. So when she says that, so it started to change when we were there. When I was younger. Now Kim is just a little bit older than me, so she remembers.
I'm a year older.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a little bit, but I remember
just a year now.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. But I remember being in Cortland Elementary School and looking out the back where the playground was, and there's a dead body, right? There's a dead body.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, and they had the chalk line and stuff like that. I remember being in Hamtramck and at 5, 6 years old, and the guy got shot in the stomach, and I could see he had on a white shirt and his stomach was full of blood. So I kind of remember it a little bit differently, actually a lot differently, because some of those things were significant to me. And when we got to be teenagers, you got KK, he got killed in school. You got so many things that started to happen. And in that late 80s, early 90s, it became a war zone. It literally was a war zone. So, Kim, go ahead. Let's talk about this past so we can get up to the present day. So what about our past is most significant to you?
Now, for me, I will tell you, and I'm just going to be honest, when it comes to our history, I was one of those people that didn't know a whole lot about our history. Within the last, I'll say 3-4 years, I've learned some things. So the one thing that sticks out to me that I've heard a lot of Black people talk about is Black Wall Street and what happened during that period of time, and how we were able as Black people to create all these businesses. And I mean, all this, we essentially had our own community where, we were thriving. And then, you had people come in there and wanted to destroy it. So for me to know that we are capable of doing things like that, we're not just singers, we're not just dancers, we're not just athletes. We are able to create businesses. We're doctors, we're lawyers, and all these things. So for me, that helps me understand my power as a human being and as a Black person. And it lets me know I've always been a person that thought that I could achieve anything anyway, regardless of what my circumstances were. But that just made things plainer to me in my mind that I was a strong Black person that could do anything, basically.
Okay. So
but can I ask you a question, Kim? Like after finding that out, because once I did the research and found everything, it left me with the question of how did we get from that to where we are now? Because now, like Tulsa, Oklahoma, for example, which is just one of many Black communities that were thriving. But we had everything then that we are begging for now. So it left me with that question, like, how did we go from there to here?
So that's a good point, Will. That's a good point. I do want, because hold on, Kim.
No, go ahead.
Because what he's saying is where we're going to go. Right now, we want to talk about where we are today. So you just kind of segued us into that. So please answer this question, and we're going to talk about today. I want to know where are we today? Where are we today?
I would
think
argue
that what
I wouldn't even argue. I would just throw the line out there. It's probably more Black business owners than ever at this point in time, with the advent of social media and just everything being much more accessible, and people having the opportunity to really craft their fan bases on their own and build their businesses from the ground up with all these tools around. I mean, what do y'all think? I think it's what do y'all think?
I think that technology has allowed that to happen. Because of what Will was just saying, I think that from the time of Tulsa, Oklahoma, I think that, and I'm just going to say this, we're in a system of white supremacy, and that's what that was about when they destroyed all of that. So I think that when it comes to white supremacy and the lack of resources and the things that Black people have experienced, I think that a lot of despair, I think that a lot of people stop believing in themselves. I think Black people, when you're constantly being told that you're not good as a Black person, I think that a lot of that and the lack of, not being able to do certain things because you're being kept out of things. And that's what has happened to Black people. I think the system of white supremacy has made Black people, if you're not able to do certain things, you're going to be in neighborhoods where you can only afford a certain cost of living. You can only afford to live a certain way. So, a lot of things have happened. They've put drugs in the neighborhood. It's just a lot of things that have happened that has made us not believe in ourselves, and we couldn't do certain things. We weren't able to, like contractors, they can't. Go ahead.
I have a question for you, Kim. Would you say, I understand Black Wall Street, I understand 60s, 70s, 80s, I can understand all of that, white supremacy being this thing. Would you say today in 2021, white supremacy is still like the biggest thing keeping Black people back?
I think that white supremacy is a part of it, but I think for Black people now, we don't trust each other. We don't support each other. I think a lot of it is on us now. I really do. I think because of when you're in a situation where, and it's like this crabs in a barrel kind of situation, when you're in a situation where you only have so much, I think people get to the place where they believe that if I make it, then because there's not a lot there, then I can't let it, it's almost like this thing, well, I don't want anybody else to have this because there's only so much. And that's what I think that white supremacy has done to Black people. We don't want to see each other get ahead. And these are all mental things. It's something that has happened to us as far as resources and the lack of being able to, get certain educations and things like that. But I think that a lot of what has happened is, what were you going to say?
What about the system? I'm sorry. It's right. Like I see what about the system? What if the system is set up against you? What if you can't get loans?
That's what I'm saying. The system has been set up against Black people, but I think that where we are right now, we have to fight the system. We have to fight for our rights. We have to fight, and we have to do this together. And we can't do it because we don't trust each other. We're not coming together. And those are the things that we have to fix in order for us to move ahead, because until we do that, we are not going to be able to move ahead as a people. Basically,
let me chime in real quick. Like, of course, the system, you're talking about housing loans, obviously, like redlining, like those policies, that's the biggest. So you're talking about the wealth gap in the country between like white people, Black people. That's the biggest thing, because most people, their net worth is the houses that they own. And when you deny people being able to buy houses, that's part of it, right? But I guess my issue always is like, how productive is it? It's one thing to identify white supremacy and all that. How productive is it at a certain point to keep saying we held back because of white people? We can't get better until white people change.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
I'm sorry, but yeah, that's one of my biggest things. Like, I'm big on self accountability. It's like we can't deny that white supremacy exists in America.
No,
we can't. That's the foundation it was built on. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like now we got to look into their playbook. Even back then, we had to look into their playbook. We know what redlining caused. Redlining eventually causes gentrification. They give us the neighborhood, they overprice us for it. We destroy it. They come back, buy it cheaper, rebuild it, sell it to us for even higher, because we still feel like what they have is better. And it's like you said earlier, exactly. Kim, like certain things, you know, you might be in this impoverished neighborhood or whatever, and you feel like you can't do better.
So, Will, I'm going to cut you off, man, because
I'm not keeping a place clean or not accepting.
Yeah, I'm going to cut you off. I'm going to cut you off because what happens is I do want to I want to hear some of the real points, like why the crime rate, right? Why the low school, test scores or something like that? Why those things? And we're not blaming.
It's
but
resources, basically. I'm sorry.
So the crime rate is high because of resources.
This is the thing that happens in Black neighborhoods, and this is what people need to understand. If you are in a situation where you only have so much and you're struggling to survive, and you can't get a job if you've gone to jail for marijuana, you can't get a job and all this other stuff. And Black people, when they do crimes in Black neighborhoods, they're doing crimes against people that are in the vicinity. They're trying to survive. I'm not making any excuses for crime. I'm not. But these are the realities.
That actually sounds like an excuse.
They're doing crimes against people that they know. Also,
that
they're
sounds
not
like an
going
excuse.
into white
A crime is a crime.
Crimes.
A crime is a crime, and in my head,
It is
worse.
a crime.
If it's against me, if I commit a crime against somebody I know, it's worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's worse.
But this is the thing where we need to get to, and I'm sorry, Justin. Let me just make this one point again. What we need to do is get to the place where I understand if somebody does a crime against me, I'm going to be upset. But we have to start. If you can be a mentor to some of these young boys and things like that, we have to start getting involved with this thing.
But because
there are we have issues. So if you have resources and you can do things to help, that's what you need to start doing. You can't just say, throw them away. We have to start getting involved. That's just the bottom line.
Let's let Justin listen.
Let me jump in. So I feel like there's it's a level of nuance that you got to have, right? Because there's the fact Black people commit a disproportionate amount of violent crime. You know what I'm saying? We're only 13% of the population, but I think Black people commit close to half of the murders in the country. So there's that fact, right? Then there's also, you don't want to pathologize an entire community. That's what the white supremacists do, to act like Black people are just inherently violent or something like that, right? Obviously, our history is unique. We have this history of being subjugated, of being dehumanized, of being all of that. Most recently, we have in our inner cities, we have the history of incredible violence. I remember working with high school students. These dudes are like 16 and they mind is just normal. You know what I mean? It's just normal to all people getting killed all the time. It's just normal, them having guns. It's normal for them to bullets coming through the window and all of that. And the mental health issues that cause. Like you said, you saw that dead body at 5-6 years old. What do you think that did to you mentally? You know what I mean? If you keep seeing people that look like you, that people like yourself that are getting treated like this, what does that do to you and your own self-esteem? So there's like these combinations of two types of things. You have to be like, this is the fact about the statistics on violence and all that, but also like the sympathy and the understanding that you need to say, like, what's at the root of this thing. And I think you kind of need to juggle those two things at the same time.
Okay.
Exactly.
So Brandon,
they're suffering from PTSD, I'm sure. A lot of us are probably suffering from PTSD.
I agree with that. So Brandon, take us to the future. Like, so the podcast really is about what do we do to move us forward, right? So I want to start that discussion. So what do we do? Kim, you kind of started it already, but I want, like, Brandon, what are some things that we can do to move us forward so that we are not on a world stage? If you look at world news in England and Germany and all of these countries, I mean, Black people are not looked at in a good way. So what do we do to move us forward? Brandon, we'll start with you.
Well, I'll never say I'm credible enough to speak on, the whole race and moving things like that. But I think
it's an opinion show. It's an opinion show. So it's an opinion show. So you can have an opinion.
Yeah, I'm just about it. I think it starts in our homes, right? It starts with things like this. I think I said, this podcast in itself has the opportunity to teach not only us, but other viewers, how to have that healthy conversation. You know what I mean? Especially you think about us as Black men, we've been told, it's so many of us, I believe, been told from birth, don't show any emotion, don't share your feelings, don't open up. And what does that do to us? What does that do to you mentally? So I think it starts with taking care of ourselves, taking care of one another, things of that nature.
Okay. Will, what do you think we have to do? We want to go forward, man. I'm tired of being like the bottom of society, or not being, but feeling like it, because there's a lot of Black people doing so well, man. And so what do we do to move us forward, in your opinion?
Just in my opinion, it's three things that I feel that, Black people need to do. One, you guys may not agree with, but I feel like one of the first things we need to do is disassociate ourselves with slavery. We need to disassociate ourselves with that history, focus more on the great things that we have accomplished. It may be hard to find because they're not, in too many books, but if we do the work to rediscover the better part of our history, we all know that, we're from Egypt and all that. I think if we focus a little more on that, disassociate ourselves with the slavery and the white supremacy. The second thing I say is self-accountability. We got this thing. I honestly feel like anybody who was born after 1970 shouldn't ever complain about slavery or anything. And it's just my personal, because you look back in the 60s and you look at Martin, you look at the Panthers, you look at all the things these guys fought for to try to move us forward. We was moving forward. At some point, we stopped the car and got out. At some point, we decided that criminality, selling drugs, gang banging, all these negatives that represent us now, at some point, we chose to accept that. And it's crazy, like, how did we get there? And my third thing would just simply be, as far as, like you said earlier, Bob, as far as, like, it's crazy because I cut a lot of Nigerians. They do not identify with Black Americans.
So you cut out for a minute. Say that one more time.
The third thing I think we need to do is we need to choose who represents us better. We need to get away from allowing the athletes, the rappers, the entertainers, because it kind of it boxes us in. It puts us in a box, and we got a lot of negative. We got a lot of, especially amongst the rappers and the entertainers. There's a lot of negativity that comes with that. All these guys, they're rapping about selling drugs and shooting, and now they're talking about doing drugs. And those are the people who not only influence what other races think of us, but what we think of ourselves.
What about Cardi B and Megan?
The thing about that is, Cardi B and Meg, that kind of fall on the parents. If you sitting there and your kids watching Cardi B and Meg, they obviously are for adults. What they did on the Grammys, we could say they're pushing another message, but
what message is that?
That whole, it's and this kind of relates to the last.
He getting real careful with the words. He getting real careful with the words.
They're on some female superiority. It's crazy. Somebody in the barbershop said that they're rapping like Luke Skywalker was back in the 80s, and 90s. Like, they're degrading the men now. You know what I'm saying?
Back to that other episode.
Yeah.
So that's.
But just to sum it up, though, I think those three things are important for Black people to move forward in this country.
Okay.
Especially the self-accountability. Like, we at some point we have to stop pointing the finger, man. Like, I grew up in the hood. I grew up in, not too far from Highland Park, and it was a rough upbringing. But everything I went through over there conditioned me to be able to survive in this world. So we have to take our positives wherever we can and just stop always pointing the finger at the other man. I mean, it's always another choice.
So, excuse me. I'm gonna think that's powerful, man. That's powerful, Will. That's an awesome statement. Justin, what do you think?
What do I think? I think that we need to stop doing to ourselves what we accuse others of doing to us. For instance, what do I mean by that? We can feel like there's limited options. White people put a box on like what it means to be Black is this really negative stereotype. But in my experience, a lot of the time, I'll say, well, white people do it too, but really mostly white liberal people. I think white liberal people are as far as white, they're the most racist people in the country, but that's a whole other conversation. Black people can be so limited in what we think of ourselves that we police each other. Oh, you not Black. Oh, you doing this? Oh, you not Black. Oh, you talk like this. You not Black. Oh, you into this? You not Black. And we limit the possibilities for what we make that box even smaller for ourselves. Because I mean, even the idea of being Black, like we're talking about this in this race, nobody came to the United States. Nobody was Black on the boat. Nobody was Black when they stepped foot on the soil. Black, that racial identity is a construct that was created for the purposes of justifying we can make them slaves. Now we taking that straight up white supremacist concept and we put it on ourselves and all of that, instead of expanding it, instead of rethinking it, or instead of, I'm not saying disregard it altogether, we still have an ethnic identity, but as far as a racial identity, like I'm getting going all over the place now, so I'm gonna stop. But I think it has to be that more willingness. I think we can't point the finger at other people if we're doing it to ourselves and all that. I will say, Will, you was trying to be real careful with the Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion stuff. I doubt anybody in here, if you have a daughter, none of y'all will want your daughter to be on stage when she grown doing that. And that's one of the things I'll say when we're talking about older generations. I
enjoyed watching it though, so that was my hesitation.
Oh, come on, see, that's what I'm saying. I don't know about that. I don't know if we want to teach that.
I don't want to be a hypocrite.
I don't know if we want to teach that to young dudes right there though. We supposed to be looking at all of this and all that. You know what I'm saying? But that's one of the things though. When you talk about community, when you talk about like what was the morals of the generations before us, that in the face of even crazier oppression, they were still going up. We done got away from that completely. So that's maybe a whole other conversation too.
But see, we let our morals go when and we gave ourselves the excuse that it was the white man. Right. We let our morals go.
Right.
I don't care how much drugs they brought over here on the ships. We chose to sold. Right. We chose to sell, and we sold them to people that looked like us. They brought the guns. We chose to pick the guns up and use them on people that look like us. We made the choice. It ain't like they took our choice away. In this conversation I was having with my mom, she hates when I say it, but I'm like, hell, just think if the first 3 ships of slaves would have jumped over. If they would have decided that, you know what, I don't know what they got planned for us, but I don't want to see it, so I'm gonna jump off the ship. Would Black Americans be sitting here now like, damn, we were slaves?
How can they jump if they were in chains? I don't understand.
I mean, but when they brought,
I understand the metaphor.
They gotta feed you. What I'm saying, if they would have made a different choice, if they would have just chose to fight, you could always choose death. Some people feel like, my mom, she's one of the people who feel like death isn't a choice, but like sometimes, it's always a choice, is all I'm saying. They could have fought back.
Let me hop in there. I'm gonna stop you real quick, because I feel you too. And if y'all don't know, Will is my barber, man, and guy I really, really respect, somebody I learn from often. You know what I'm saying? So, but here's what I'm gonna say, because as much as I feel you, and I am not held back by the white man, ain't nobody gonna stop me from doing what I'm gonna do. I agree with that. We need to shape our own identity, but we speak from a position that's much different from those folks. We never seen that fear. We never, had everything stripped away from us like that. We speak from a position of power today, much more powerful than those folks. So I don't think we can put ourselves in our shoes.
But you just said it in a nutshell, Brandon. They took everything. You had nothing else to lose. They took everything.
But I think,
Yeah, let Kim
but I
go.
think that you have, I think that you have to though. I was never a slave. I didn't grow up in a time where I didn't have anything. We actually, and I don't know, Bobby, your recollection. I mean, I know we had some things to deal with because of, you know, our mother and our father. But when it came to things like Christmas and things like that, we had a lot. And that's what I remember.
So,
But I think that in order for you to understand certain things, you don't have to be a person who's gone through slavery to kind of empathize and see that, okay, this is my history. No, not wallow in it, not dwell in it or anything like that. But I think that we have to say, when you're talking about someone who has been brutalized and battered and you know, the people in the civil rights era and things that the people, when they've gone through all of this stuff, it does something to you mentally. And I do understand that you have to get to the place where you have to be able to make your own choices, but you have to get there. You have to get there. It's not something that you can say, okay, well, you need to change your mind today after I've been through all this stuff. People have to get there. And this is the thing that some people don't understand, that you cannot blame people because you have gotten there. And I'm not talking about, see, millennials and Gen Zs, you guys have you are in a different situation because you guys, the technology, everything, and your tolerance level is, when it comes to other races and you guys dealing with them, you guys are in a whole different place. And I love that, because you guys are going to be our leaders, and we need people like you to do that. White, black, all of y'all working together. But people like myself from who are I'm the last year of the baby boomers, and people, you know, a little who are older than me. We are closer to it. We're closer to it. But I think
they tried to say that I was a baby boomer. I am not a baby boomer.
No, I'm the last year of the baby boomer.
Thank you.
He's the next generation.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. So yeah. I do want to, and can we have a different accounts of what went on? Because I remember things like McCarroll. I remember Squeak. I remember that. I remember in your building when you were 17, 18 years old, and the guy killed the girl, and it was blood everywhere. You don't remember that?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not bad.
It sounds like what we need.
But I was almost an adult then. I'm talking
you
about
were a teenager.
In my formative years coming up, I remember everybody's lawn looking nice, and the white people living down the street and all this other stuff across the street.
And so I can name, probably growing up, 25 people who were killed. I'm talking murdered, right? In our neighborhood, right? In our neighborhood.
Tell me in the house.
Hey, tell me, and ask Mark. Mark can say the same thing. But tell me, if in a suburb, right, Justin, Brandon, how many times have you heard of anyone being killed? I don't want to. If we digressing,
let me answer that.
Hold on. Hey, Kim, they have a community garden too. While y'all.
You know, I'm going to tell you something. I just remember running, playing, and jumping, and just being a kid. I mean, we had there was a block club. I mean, people remember the block parties and
we
stuff.
had a block club.
Remember that?
Let me get in there.
Oh my God. Yeah,
go ahead. Get in there. One, I think that's fine. I think one. Maybe we need to all be more like Kim. Maybe we need the red button. What was it on Men in Black to make them forget the memory, and then you just remember all the good stuff.
Yeah,
you know, and that is solve a whole lot of problems. But as far as your question about like obviously we didn't see nobody, at least I'll say for me, I didn't see nobody, none of that stuff that y'all saw.
Yeah.
None of that really happened. You know what I mean?
Right.
But, and this goes back to the culture, the limits, people who grew up in Southfield, you know what I'm saying? There are still multiple people grew up where we grew up that somehow ended up with prison, that themselves ended up killing somebody, that ended up armed robbery or something like that. Now, how does that happen? You know what I'm saying?
I think that falls to what Bob was saying about what you call it, Bob, the boys in the hood era.
Yeah.
I think that plays, you know, because and me and Brandon talk about it a lot too. I think, you know, the movies, the music, and I think you said something too earlier, Jonathan. It's like even young guys who are growing up in Southfield and some of the better neighborhoods, it's a pressure on them to feel like they got to be gangster, or they got to have some kind of street to them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they end up chasing the wrong things to try to feel black enough for black people.
Right.
Yeah,
so
I
guess I want to because it's getting I want to get to the meat, potatoes, the end of it, right? Because we running a little bit long, but it's cool. I want to know if you could do one thing, right, to move black people forward, what would that be? And I'm not talking about somebody else. I'm talking about as an individual, right? What would you do to move us forward, right? Justin, I didn't start with you yet. If you could do one thing, or you think there's something that is significant, what would you do? What would you do to move the black community forward?
You should start with somebody else. I got to think for a second. If I only got one thing, I need a bit more time.
Okay.
Well,
all right.
I've never answered the question about how would I.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
What do I?
Yeah, we had a lot of conversation.
I think.
Go ahead.
I know.
Go.
The thing that I think that black people need to do, and this may sound very simple. We need to start trusting each other more. We don't trust each other. I think that we need to be okay with each other getting ahead. And I think we need to understand when one of us get ahead, what it should be is a victory for all of us. And I think that we need to stop wanting to be liked by other people. It doesn't matter if someone is a racist and they don't like us. We get so caught up in all of that it just, you know, stops us from being able to perform and do the things that we need to do in this country and live our lives. It doesn't matter. As long as we are in the things that we need to be concentrating is on getting our rights so that we can get the resources and the things that we need to do so that we can move forward. And there needs to be a consensus in the black community as to how we move forward as a unit also, I think.
So how would you, or what would you do as an individual? What would you do to bring that about?
Well, the things that I'm already doing, my thing is because I'm not someone who's a millionaire, so I can't put money and resources into community centers and things like that to help children. Just trying to encourage Black people to know that you can have your own businesses. You are worthy of anything that you want to do. These are the things I just try to encourage people. These are the things that I do. And I'm thinking about, because the school that I graduated from, the college that I graduated from, wants me to start mentoring like college age people. So I'm thinking about doing that. So These are the things, just trying to change minds. And that's really part of it. It's just getting that mindset together.
All right, Justin, I'm gonna go. You missed your turn, man. I'm gonna go to Will real quick. No, you didn't miss it. We're gonna get back to you. I think we'll have a good response to that. So if you could do one thing, what would that thing be? Like to move us forward?
I know it's impossible, but it's kind of simple. I would just simply rewind time and we wouldn't integrate. I think once we integrated, it took successful Blacks out of the communities. It took our money out of our communities. It really ushered in this whole new era of the hood. Like when you think about prior to us integrating, we had to live amongst each other. We had to shop with each other. We had to party with each other. So I would just simply take that choice away until we heal as a people, until we accept and love and treat each other the way that we're supposed to as a people. I mean, you can't make nothing right with nobody else when it's not right with you. So I'll just simply do that.
Okay,
I totally agree with that.
That's pretty significant. Yeah, that's significant. Yeah. All right, Justin, go ahead.
Well, I'll say that there's some validity to that, because even if you look at statistics after integration with the schools, you know what I mean, you lose so many Black teachers and stuff because kids are not in those schools anymore and they go into the white schools, and the same thing with the businesses. So I get some validity to that. But you don't think that's kind of going backwards a little bit? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, shouldn't we? Because at the end of the day, let me finish. Okay. At the end of the day, right? Race is made up. You know what I'm saying? Ethnicity is a real thing. We're all our different cultures and ethnic groups and all of that. But race is made up. You know what I'm saying? We should be able to integrate and work with other people and stuff like that just because they, you know what I mean? So in a way, it's like, I get it. But also that's like, man, maybe people are, maybe we just as bad. Maybe us mentally, we just as bad as the people in the 1800s and stuff, because we can't handle dealing with people that's different than us. So maybe that's that. I would say though, as far as influencing, go ahead, Kim.
No, I was just gonna say something to what Will was saying. What he was saying is that until the healing from slavery and the things that we've gone through, until we get that healing, then we should integrate. I think he was saying before we do that, we just need to.
How is that healing going to happen? First. What do you mean by that? How we just going to sit in a circle with each other and that's going to heal us? Like, how does the healing happen?
One thing that happened, with integration is we lost sight of who our enemy was.
Who's the enemy?
There's no enemy.
We lost sight of who our enemy was. We felt like
there's no enemy. Who's the enemy?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Who's the enemy?
The people who are oppressing us.
So
if you're this is the thing, you
the
can't.
People who are making biased laws, the people who built this whole systemic racism that we are going crazy over right now. Integration played a part in that because it allowed them to put their racism in the closet. At one point, we knew that white people
and you were constantly see, this is what happened. You're being constantly brutalized by a system. You're constantly being brutalized by a system. So you cannot heal if that is happening to you. So he's right. What happens is Black people, when we integrate it, because we don't know who we are because of what has happened to us, we're just all in this system. Because I'm going to tell you something.
What responsibility?
Even today, I'm sorry. Exactly who.
I wasn't going to butt in, but I'm sorry. What responsibility do we have? You keep blaming the system.
Let me what you said earlier, Bob.
But that's part of the problem now. That's part. If you're not a part of the solution, you're part of the problem. You have to understand. See, this is the thing. All you can do is go by your own experience. And when you do that, you are forgetting other people. Everybody doesn't have the same mindset. So you have to understand, if you're dealing with a weaker person,
we have to have some responsibility.
If they've gone through something and they haven't come out of it the way that you have, you can't say, well, you like the system is telling other people, pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Let Justin, go ahead. Justin had a point. Justin had a point. Go ahead, Justin.
Well, no, you saying essentially you're asking about agency. You know what I'm saying? By that, I'm talking about the responsibility, essentially, like who controls you, essentially. You know what I'm saying? And you're saying we're denying Black people their agency. White people have full power.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
I'm not saying you're saying that. I'm not saying you're saying that. Kim. But my bad. I didn't mean to say it like that. But I'm talking about the point that was making and all of that, right? asking about that, because I think that is the thing. I remember going to college, and to go to the school I had, everybody, all the Black people, they was, 3.8, 3.9, 4.0, top 5% of their class in high school. We get to college though, and they start teaching us, oh man, it's white supremacy, all of this stuff, man. All the white people, they make it hard for you. It's systemic racism. It's all of this. We get to graduation. Out of the whole graduating class, one Black person had a 3.5 or higher, and the rest of them didn't have that. Most of them didn't even have 3.0s. You know what I'm saying? And these were people, like I said, in their high schools, was the star students in their high school. They get to college, all of a sudden, because they're getting taught, fed this white supremacy stuff, the bar is lowered for you and all of that. You know what I mean? Oh, you got an excuse because it's not your fault. You're not responsible for yourself. It's white people's fault and all of that. Don't nobody succeed and don't nobody achieve and all that. So that's why, and that's obviously white liberal people teaching that to Black people for the most part, as far as in the context of that school, and as far as the context of that school. But my point is that, that focus on the white supremacy, like if that's the, like, is, you know what I'm saying? And that I don't think you can acknowledge that as a fact, the history of the country. But what does that actually do for you walking around? Like you just walking around like that don't bother them, and you sitting there mad, you sitting there stressed out, you sitting there not achieving because you too busy.
The way that see, if you're talking about someone who is not progressive and someone who's not doing anything, I'm someone who understands that systemic white supremacy is a real thing. Mm-hmm. The thing is, when you start denying it, it's a system. It's something. It's when you're trying to do certain things and you're not able to do certain things because of the system. That's how you know it's a real thing. It's not something that you're constantly concentrating on. Or because if you do that, you're not going to be able to do anything. I would not be the person that I am today if I sat up here and said systemic racism is going to keep me down. But you have to understand that it is keeping a lot of people down. And the thing is, so we as Black people have to help those people that it is keeping down, because it is a system that is keeping people down. When you deny it, you're part of the problem.
Along the lines of the
hold on. Let's go one at a time. We missed Brandon. I need to know what Brandon, what would he do?
I'm sorry, Brandon. I'm sorry, Brandon.
I need to know what Brandon would do to move us forward.
I didn't say what I would do.
Yeah, let him say his piece.
No, you go, Brandon. I'm saying I got to say mine too.
Oh yeah, go, because you asked on an individualized level. So when we were kids, like many other kids, you want the best clothes. You remember me and Chris, we used to do the Cartier glasses and the Prada shoes, save up all this money and do all this stuff to try to get that stuff so we could feel like something, so we could feel like we were better than other folks, right? Kim mentioned something about the crab in the bucket mentality. So one thing, me being away 8 years in the U.S. Air Force, became financially literate. You know what I'm saying? So one thing I do on a personal level, when I have the opportunity, especially to speak to other, young Black men, Black women, about financial education, whether it be credit, whether it be investing their money and seeking financial freedom, I always jump on those opportunities, because we all can make it, man. It's enough for everybody out here. So that's what I do.
That's a good point.
That's beautiful right there. It's beautiful. Yeah. Let me speak.
Yeah.
No, to go back to Kim, the thing is, I'll say, I think we're agreeing with each other. I think we're agreeing with each other in the sense that I agree with everything you're saying about teaching people about white supremacy, but you have to acknowledge it as fact, not ignoring it. I guess my thing is not making it so big that's like, it's this ghost, this specter that's haunting you at all times. You know what I mean? And it's just like, yes, this is a thing. It's just like something as simple as when y'all told us growing up, and that's like, I feel like a lot of Black kids get told, you got to be twice as good. It's harder for you out here. You know what I mean? And stuff like that, without making white people this big thing that's just
monster.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm agreeing with you, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's why I said that we need to stop worrying about being liked and things like that, because it will be in your head that someone doesn't like you because of the color of your skin. Who cares? Move and do what you need to do. So let them be who they're going to be. And don't worry about it. That's how I feel.
So I actually knew that this would be I mean, just a wonderful topic. I think that most people have an opinion on it, and even white people. I think, if during slavery or you had the abolitionists, you had people who were real God-fearing people, not people who say God and they do otherwise. But at the end of the day, we are one race at the end of the day. Right. So like when Will said we have to, the integration, but you did. I will say you brought that home because when you said maybe that's the thing to do. We do have to start wrapping it up. We actually went a little bit long. I knew it was going to be a good topic. I knew it was going to be a little bit heated. It's like, y'all waited to get really, really into it. But I'm actually glad we did. I think it's a great topic. Will, thank you. I appreciate you coming back. And we're working on putting together like a regular cast. And you definitely would be first string. You know what I'm saying? He has some very, very valid points and was very passionate. Justin, of course, and Brandon, both of you guys are you sound so intelligent, man. It's wonderful to hear you talk about these topics. And Kim, I'm gonna tell you again, you are just a phenomenal